Yo, thanks for checking me out here on Fresberg Creates. My name is Franky and I'm one of the digital artists for Fresberg Cartoon, among many other projects and productions. And at Fresberg Cartoon, we provide a lot of fun fact videos on historical events. We feature biographies and more online for television stations around the world and of course online, like on YouTube. Today I'm working on a fun facts video about vampires, so it's going to be interesting. So if you'd like to see some digital illustration at work and watching the process along the way with fun facts from history and more, feel free to check us out on YouTube by searching hashtag Fresberg Creates for videos like this. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe to get instant alerts when we release new videos to your Android or iPhone or personal computer. So with that said, I'm going to take you over to my software where we begin drawing and getting the line art ready to begin completing our artwork. So getting the party started, I'm a new digital artist and still learning and making my way through. So the application I'm using today will be a combination of Moho Pro 12 along with Clip Studio Paint. Now with Clip Studio Paint, you can literally do everything you need to do there, but I'm more comfortable or become accustomed to doing my line art and preparing the framework for my digital art there in Moho Pro. So I just feel more comfortable there, and I like the point-based options while I work there. If I mess up, I can kind of move things around. Illustrator has that capability too, but once again, I'm using Moho Pro 12 and Clip Studio Paint. Now, talking about the image I have laid out in the background for my reference, no, it's not a vampire image per se. This is actually one of my co-workers from my weekend job. Her name is Jamie, so she volunteered to let me turn her into a vampire. Yeah, so that's where we're going with this. I put the teeth in there like you're seeing so I can have that vampire look, but the goal is to not have it so Photoshop-esque like you're seeing there. I basically just copied and put a mouth inside her mouth, cut her own mouth out, etc. But to make it all come together. Now, of course, with the vampire look, I want to make her look a little evil. So you'll see me do some touch-ups, but let's get to work, all right? Of course, when we say facts about vampires and putting this together, vampires are not real. At least, we haven't scientifically proven that there are vampires in existence or have been in existence in history. So for the most part, a lot of what we're talking about is based off of vampires being mythological creatures. For example, I used to be terrified of Count Dracula as a kid. Although being, a kid and being afraid of most things that are scary, I'm just being transparent. There weren't a lot of things that, as a kid, I wasn't afraid of. So, long story short, I was just a scary kid. Anyway, as I'm making my way through the process, when you look back through history, some of the research I've done says that subjects of vampires or vampires being known in history typically come from the story of Dracula. Dracula has to be the most famous vampire in history. Once again, Dracula's not real. Vampires are not real, I think. And there was no real Dracula per se, but the storyline of Count Dracula came from a novel. Of course, many folks may not have read the novel, but a lot of folks have seen the film made from Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, which was published in, if I see my notes over here to the side, 1897. So Bram Stoker was an Irish author who made his claim to fame by writing the Gothic novel Dracula. An interesting thing about Bram Stoker is when you look at his biography, he was also known for being a personal assistant and a manager of a theater. I guess that makes sense. Novel writer, personal assistant, theater manager. Yeah, never mind. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, I've been around long enough to remember the old black and white Dracula movies with Dracula running around and he had those long fangs taking bites out of his beautiful victims. By the time Bram Stoker films came around, it was a lot more gory by then versus those old school movies. But truth be told, my favorite vampire of all time is Blade. Shout out to Wesley Snipes. Shout out to Real Talk. Can I get another blade for old time's sake? I'm just saying, I love me some Wesley. Anywho, behind the scenes, a lot of people say that Stoker did have a muse when creating the storyline for Count Dracula. Now, for those of you that don't understand what the term muse means, it's like an inspiration to creating the book Dracula. For example, my inspiration for creating my vampire today is Jamie. I'm using her image to create my vampire masterpiece. Well, the same thing applies to Bram Stoker and his creation of Dracula. He had his own Jamie. Now, there are some that believe that Stoker's usage of the style of a person that Dracula was came from a Romanian ruler. One of the facts when doing research that we will be sharing during our shortened cartoon will be that VLAD Dracula was the person that many considered to be Stoker's muse, and it even came out with Stoker that was his muse. So VLAD was born in Transylvania, Romania. Try to say that a bunch of times. Transylvania, Romania. Anywho, he ruled there off and on from about 1456 to 1462. Now, when you think of Bram Stoker's inspiration and him using VLAD Dracula, this guy was by no means a nice guy. He was literally a beast. For example, when you see the character Dracula and how evil he can be in the novel and in the films, think about that for just a second with his inspiration going toward Dracula, or the inspiration behind Dracula. Dude was so bad, he also had another nickname. His nickname was Vlad the Impaler. I didn't stutter. Vlad the Impaler. How he got that nickname was basically from how he dealt with his enemies as a Romanian ruler. Now, I'm not going to get too graphic with my language, but just knowing that the man's nickname was the Impaler says enough in itself. So let's just say that boy was nothing nice. Speaking of nothing nice, I am definitely liking how this evil photo of Jamie is coming together. A lot of times when you begin the creation process, you just never know if it is going to come out like you wanted to or not. But so far, so good. The line art is always the way I start, just to bring my framework together on the overall picture. Now I'm using a lot of black lines here, but that is just to give me something to begin with. Honestly, I'm not for sure if I'll keep all the black line art and just use coloring to emphasize key points of her facial structure or not, but we'll see as we go. When you're dealing with the creative process and how that can bring things together, something like a cartoon, a lot of this is just basically trial and error, really. Even with the facts that we look at, there are some facts that don't make it to the storyline, but of course we can't get every single detail of a person's life in a short 2-minute video, so we try our best. Wow, I like making my way through. Kind of bear with me as I'm going through. Facts, drawing, all that, putting it together, Fresberg creates. At the end of the day though, we try to go for what will catch a viewer's eye and then open it up for others, to give feedback in the comment section online on what we basically do. Anywho, pretty much everything is flowing, going through, nice and fluid with the creation process, and at the end, we come up with something like a lot of stories about vampires. It all kind of comes together. So when you look at vampires, most people associate vampires with bats. Where the stories have continued to be told with bats, that's something that's kind of a norm. Typically they use a combination of bats and vampires, but other writers may use wolves in their storyline. Now, in more traditional storytelling, you see bats, like I mentioned before, as the alter egos of the vampires. But hey, a wolf can do his thing too. If you want to be a wolf in 2019, go ahead and be a wolf. Of course, wolves can be associated with werewolves as well, but there are some stories that align vampires with that transformation feature too. So it kind of is what it is. Wolves doing their thing, bats flying around. I guess whatever floats your bat, or should I say boat? Never mind. I think that's a little corny. Anyway, moving on. What is the origin of vampires? A lot of times myths come from the Middle Ages. Today, it was common to know that vampires aren't real, but you have to think way back in the day. Like, one thing that people pretty much blamed on vampires was if an entire family died. Well, they didn't know that these were plagues wiping people out, so they blame it on one individual in the family killing the rest of the family. Oh my goodness, they had to be a vampire. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it was back then. For example, in the Middle Ages, if they literally thought you were a vampire, so they pick somebody in the family, they hunt them down, or if they died, when they did the autopsy, this is going to sound a little gory, the first thing they would do is plant a stake in their heart. That was basically their way of trying to kill the vampires. Now today we know technology, yada yada yada. There are no vampires, but they were doing their best back then. For example, today I have friends that when the summertime hits and the sun comes out, it tears their skin up without that sunscreen. Back then, they didn't have sunscreen. So, if they saw somebody with some bad skin disease, they thought they were a vampire getting burnt up for coming out in the daytime. It was what it was. That's how they thought back in the day. I guess they would totally freak out now if they saw some things online. I mean, nowadays, when you look online, there are entire communities of self-proclaimed vampires. Of course, with anything else, there are levels to the vampire lifestyle. There are some folks who just like the dressing up part, the cosplay part, or they may use the term fangdom. Then there are others who actually go a little bit more extreme in the vampire lifestyle. For example, you can find stories online of people literally drinking blood and having others give their blood by cutting themselves so that they can drink a little bit of blood for whatever they think it does for them. But I am wrapping this up, all right? I hope you like what you are seeing here. I went from the normal Jamie with her scary face to full-fledged Jamie the Vampire. I hope you like it. Yeah, I like it. I'll be using this graphic, so I'll be putting that pretty much in my cover art and some of the main images for our Fun Facts cartoon about vampires. You can always catch the Fresberg cartoon channel on YouTube or broadcasting in your local area on television. We always come on here in the Central Valley on Community Media Access Collaborative and more. As for me, each week we come through with the behind the scenes stuff because we do our Fun Facts cartoons every week, putting that together. What more can I say? Once again, if you like what you saw, you can always follow us online at YouTube, subscribe there, get notifications to your Android, iPhone, and that's pretty much it. I'll see you next time on Fresberg Creates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and don't forget to be creative.
A mythological creature that is known for roaming at night in search of feeding on human blood with their sharp fangs? Stay tuned for more, as I have interesting facts from the history of vampire tales for students. Beginning with fact number 1, the popularity of vampires came from a book. A lot of people know vampires from the tales of Count Dracula, the legendary blood-sucking character of Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula, which was published in 1897. Moving on with fact number 2, vampires can transform in many stories. In general, vampires are known to hunt for their prey at night since sunlight weakens their powers. This is where when reading about vampires, some may have the ability to morph into bats or wolves. With fact number 3, when looking at the story of Bram Stoker's Count Dracula, the Count was named after a man named VLAD Dracula. VLAD Dracula was born in Transylvania, Romania. He ruled there off and on again from 1456 to 1462. Historically, although there has been no real proof, many Middle-aged cultures believed in vampires. With fact number 4, when someone was suspected of being a vampire after death, they would take a stake and drive it through the suspect's heart. With my 5th and final fact, although science says there's no vampires, there are still real people who claim to be vampires. This is where you can find communities of vampires and people who identify as living in the vampire lifestyle around the world who drink small amounts of blood in an effort to stay healthy. And that's a wrap with my top 5 interesting facts about vampires for students. If you are a student of history and want more fun facts, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on this video to get instant alerts on YouTube today.